Ah, the Bentley. Well, this thing's been a roller coaster ride since I bought this thing. And if you've been following along with me, which you should have if you're watching this video, you know that I bought this thing. It wasn't running. I got it running. It ran good for a little while. Then it started running like crap. I changed the fuel filter. It run good again. Then it started running like crap. Changed the fuel filter again. Back and forth. Blowing through fuel filters. Adding fuel filters. So as soon as I thought I had this thing running good and I could actually concentrate on some of the cosmetic issues, this thing started running like crap again. So I decided, well, I'm going to tear into the fuel tanks again. So I got the front end of the Bentley up on jack stands to kind of get it at an angle. And what I'm thinking about doing here is I'm going to actually pull these fuel pumps back out of this tank on both sides. I'm going to take a look down in there and make sure we don't have any kind of sugar or any other contaminants in there. I personally have been believing that there's not that much left, but the problem that I'm having is this thing is actually cutting off on me kind of at random, and that kind of tells me it's definitely a fuel issue. I thought it was the fuel filters. I've been changing the fuel filters, but after this last fuel filter changed, I didn't even drive it half of a mile and it was still doing the same thing. So my theory is that maybe there's some sugar down there on the sock on the fuel pump, and it's kind of stopping it up, and it'll shut off, and then when I go to start it back up, all that sugar goes away from the fuel pump, and it'll actually allow it to start back up until it goes back to the sock again and clogs it up. So I'm going to do that, and I've got it at an angle like this. There's a blind area in the front of the tank that I can't get to. So I'm actually thinking about maybe possibly flushing this tank with water. Now, normally I wouldn't do this with the tank in the car, but I'm going to try to attempt it. I think I can do it. You know, I've heard other people mention, well, why don't you just buy a tank, buy a used tank and put in there? Well, it's kind of a lot of labor to take one out and to put one in. And the other main factor that I don't really want to do it is they're around $1,000. $1,000 is the cheapest that I've actually found a fuel tank for one of these things, and that's a very big expense, especially when you're trying to stay on a budget. If I have to do it, I would do it, but I don't believe that there's enough need for me to spend that kind of money on a tank when I'm pretty sure I can get this one cleaned. So I had purposely left these panels out in this trunk just in case we had other issues and we needed to get back in here to where these fuel pumps were. These panels were a lot of work to take out. I didn't want to put them back in until I'm 100% sure. So it's fairly easy to get to these pumps. Basically, you have your electrical connections underneath these rubber grommets. Then you have a snap ring. You knock that around. You can pop that lid up and look right down in the tank. And we're going to do that first. We're going to take a look before we start tearing anything apart. So I undid the fuel line from the fuel filter, and I've installed this hose and this jug. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cycle the fuel pumps and try to pump all that gas that we have in there out. Now I believe there's maybe a little less than a quarter of a tank, so there's not a whole lot in there. But we need to get that out before we start working on the fuel pumps. So this is the first gallon that we've cycled out of the tank, and this is actually through the fuel filter that we have on the car. And as you can tell, the gasoline looks really good. It's really clean looking. I don't see any contaminants in the bottom, no residue or anything coming out. So that's a pretty good sign. I'm sure there's still some sugar in that tank, but like I told you before, I don't believe any of it's made it past the fuel filter. I have absolutely no evidence that any sugar has made it past the fuel filter. We probably have maybe 5 or 6 gallons, I'm guessing, left in the tank. So we're going to swap this out and we're going to continue pumping that gas out. So you can see the gas pumping out. Let me show you exactly how I'm doing this. So I went back here, pulled the fuel pump relay, and I got it straight wired. And that's how we're pumping the gas out. Works pretty good, as you can see. Here's gallon number 2. As you can see, looks real good. No contaminants in it either. Gallon number 3, still looking good. Gallon number 4, still looking good. Gallon number 5, still looking good. Number 6, same thing. So here's number 7, not quite a full gallon, but the pump started sounding like it was sucking a little bit of air, so that means it's time to stop. So this will be the final gallon of gas that we get out of there, actually through the fuel lines and the fuel filter via the pump. The rest of it will get out through the opening where the actual fuel pump goes down into. So here's the passenger side fuel pump, and as you can see, it looks pretty good down in there, but if you look very closely on those lines, you can see little grains. That's actually sugar. I'm guaranteeing we're going to see a little bit of sugar when we pull this pump. As you can see, those little crystals right there, that's definitely sugar. I don't think there's a whole lot in there, but there's probably some down in there. So I'm going to try a video getting these pumps out. It's kind of difficult. There's not a lot of room here in the trunk. It's kind of a tight quarters, but I'll try as best I can to make a video of this. So here's the passenger side fuel pump module straight out of the car. As you can see, I still have some gasoline in there. Take a look at that sock filter right there. You can see there's sugar on it. So I guarantee there's some sugar that's probably inside this plastic housing right here. So we're going to clean that out. So now let's go take a look at the inside of the tank. So take a look at this right here. Now this is the passenger side. And as you can see, there is quite a bit of sugar down in that gas tank. So what's actually has happened is over the period of times that we fueled this thing, this sugar has gotten dislodged and has ended up in the bottom of the tank, as you can see right here. So that silver piece that you see in the middle there, that's actually where the fuel pump actually sits. So as you can see, that sock filter was getting clogged up, and what was happening was it was sucking fuel, and then that sugar right there would get on that sock filter and stop it up and shut the car off. Well, once the suction of the pump stopped when the car shut off, the sugar would back off. Gas would be able to flow again. Then the process would repeat. That right there might be the majority of our sugar. We're going to get all that out of there, and I'm going to flush this tank. Definitely going to have to flush this tank this time. And like I said, I really don't want to use the water, but I think water is the only option. And I've got this thing sitting at an angle, so I can pretty much about get all that water out of there. So at this point, a little bit of water is a lot better than a whole lot of sugar. Now this is the passenger pump. This is the one we replaced, brand new one. And you can see the sugar down in there. We're going to get this thing cleaned up along with the other pump once we get it out. So as you can see, there is some sugar here on the driver's side, and it's not quite as bad as the passenger side, which is kind of to be expected. The fuel neck is actually on the passenger side of the tank, so any sugar that would have entered the system would have more than likely went to the passenger side first. So this side's going to need to be cleaned as well. So let's go take a look at the pump. So here's the driver's side pump. And as you can see, we got some clumps of sugar right there. We're going to get this cleaned up just like the other one. You can see we got the gas in there, but we'll go ahead and dump this out. Go ahead and get this cleaned up along with the passenger side pump. So here are the fuel pump assemblies. I got everything disassembled, cleaned up. Everything's labeled. We're going to let them sit in there dry for a day or two before we put these things back in. In the meantime, it's time to clean that tank. So I've been kind of brainstorming on how to get that sugar out of the gas tank. Well, I have this Harbor Freight hand pump here, and this is what I used to actually get the gas out originally when we first started working on this car. Now I'm going to try to use this and see if I can get some of that stuff out of there And then if I have to, I'll flush it with water. And I actually have an electric pump that I'm going to use. It's 12 volt. You just hook it to a battery, and then I should be able to pump some of that stuff out. But first, we're going to start off with the hand pump and go from there. So we've cleaned the inside of this gas tank, and I've flushed about 40 gallons of water through this thing. And what I did was, I got a garden hose with a pressure nozzle on it, and I actually got it down in there and sprayed back up. If you look up there at the top, that piece kind of curves and goes back maybe about 10 or 12 inches. So I got that nozzle down in there and sprayed it out real good, and I just kept hosing and flushing, using the shop vac, vacuuming it out. Like I said, I put about 40 gallons of water through this thing, and I just kept doing it until the water came out clear, and this is the final result. So I can't get out 100% of the water, but there's going to be a little bit left. But as soon as I put gasoline in there, it's going to go down to the bottom, and then I can flush it out using the fuel pump. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this air dry for a day or two. We're going to let the pumps air dry for a day or two. Then we're going to put it all back together.